Comrade Istan is going to respond to the questions which have been raised, and then we'll open up another round of questions, and then he'll then respond again to those questions. So thank you very much.
So to respond to some of the questions earlier, and hopefully everyone agrees here that when we talk about students' issues, we're talking about workers' issues, and we're talking about a decolonized free education, our conception of it must be propelled by workers. To get to the question about international students, that is so crucial. And on the last page of the booklet, on page 23, there's a question that we raise about coverage. And we say that we must be discussing not only the fact that international students, as if we want to be a Pan-African university, we need to include all Africans, in fact, everyone from the global south that should be able to access a free public education. But also, we need to include coverage towards TVET colleges, the rest of the PSET sector, thinking about what happens to students who are forced to drop out, other levels of education, what happens to postgraduate students. These questions of coverage are really important when we talk about the technical issues of the model, and we need to come to a kind of agreement on that. In terms of sustainability, it is something that we talked about and we analyzed in the longer versions of the model. But one important note to make about market forces in a university. You know, with market forces in South Africa, we'd have even lower wages for workers at this university than we currently have. With market forces in South Africa, we'd have a completely lost public education, really. We have to fight against the market forces that prevail in our country. And we can, because the UCT should use its historic advantage, and universities in South Africa have a certain amount of power that it can use. But more than that, when you talk about South Africa going through some kind of growth glut or something like that, we're really ignoring the issue of redistribution and inequality that is the inherent issue in our South African economy. And when you talk about taking money away from the rich to fund education, that doesn't depend on something like growth. And that's really the deeper questions that we should be asking. So but these are just my thoughts. Let's have another round of questions, and hopefully people are responding to each other as well. 1, 2, yeah.
Hi, Shan. So I have a question. So in you guys relaying the message of this meeting, you guys had said that management is also involved in this, the planning group, obviously, and they actually are advocating for a model that you guys aren't approving of. Can I please just get clarity as to what they're advocating for? Because as you noted, there are a couple of different models. So yeah, so that we can also know what the problem is.
Hello everyone, I'm Simone Cornelius. Fluff, I'm so nervous. So in the booklet, it says that only 9.2% of individuals from quintile 1 schools gain access to undergraduate programs. Okay, and when we speak of fees must fall, when we speak of decolonialization and transformation, you know, it's not something that is mutually exclusive from the rest of the country, you know? And right now, we're talking about a model that's starting from top down, right? We're starting from higher education and then hopefully going to, but then what does it mean to make higher education free when we can't get students from quintile 1 to 3 schools even to the point where they have access to higher education? Yeah, and like it's not a question to you guys, but it's rather like, I don't know, it's rather a question to everyone, and I think we all need to just contribute to ideas, and it's something we also need to think about. Thank you.
Hello. My name is John Bess. I'm a cleaner here. Let me first be frank and sincere. Nothing is free in life. I don't think you agree with me or disagree, I don't care. But we got a problem in South Africa. And everything is possible. Free education is possible. But how is it achievable? I want my grandchildren to be free education in South Africa. But my first point was, I said nothing is free in life. Now I got a problem. I think many of us will disagree with me. Each and every one of us must contribute. Whether rich or poor. I don't care if you're rich or poor. The domestic workers, whether they earn 2,000 rand a month, they must contribute to the free education of all the children. Because we want Africa to be free. We don't care about the government. It already collapsed. I think you will fully agree with me. We have no government anymore. The government is controlled by some people, and you know it. Let us be frank and be sure of ourselves. If we want everything to be free, don't worry about rich people. We all must contribute. Although I contribute a cent, I must contribute for my grandchildren's free education. Thank you very much.
I'm just going to briefly comment that I don't have answers, but yeah. So to just address the work of the planning group in terms of management. So on the planning group, Loretta, who's the DVC, sits on that planning group. And theoretically, it's supposed to be independent of management. And up to now, I do think that it has maintained independence. I mean, not up to now, like it has maintained independence. There has been tussle in it. And you can see in this document is designed to facilitate discussion. This document isn't necessarily my personal view, for example. And it's in order for us to come together and discuss things in a very open way before we come to an agreement on what kind of model we can come towards. And there is agreement from management that if we do come to consolidate some kind of opinion on this, that we can then create a university position, regardless of what, for example, the executive itself might think. And I think that's the particular power of some engagement like this, that we don't have to rely on, for example, we saw last year the executive autonomously gave a submission to the Fees Commission, which was not reflective of my viewpoint or your viewpoint or the university. It was purely an executive viewpoint, which then became UCT's viewpoint. We need to substitute that and to say that that's not our viewpoint and come to a consensus here so that we can put forward a university viewpoint. And then to talk to the fact that decolonization is not just about universities. And that was one of the main points I was trying to make as well. That when we talk about a movement, a student movement, it's a movement that feeds into general struggles. And we have to link up into struggles in the primary education sector, healthcare, housing. And we have good historical example in universities in Ethiopia, in Chile, in a number of other countries, where students are effectively able to mobilize within the universities and create broader social change. And I think anyone that's part of the movement would agree that we do need broader decolonization across the whole country. We're not just talking about decolonization in the higher education sector. But to talk more concretely towards a model, there are models out there. So firstly, as I reiterated, under no circumstances, I think, should funding come out of anything else. Under no circumstances should you have funding coming out of basic education or healthcare, for example. But there are certain funding models that simply leverage the fact that we have people that are very rich in our country and that should be funding our higher education sector. One example is corporates should be paying more. Another more concrete example is a kind of graduate tax, whether it's a corporate graduate tax or individual graduate tax, which is linked directly to the higher education sector, and that will not take any money away from healthcare or basic education. And in fact, because it's an increasingly distributive measure, may actually make funds available to put more into basic education and healthcare. And this is ultimately what we're working towards as a movement, I think, but in terms of what we need to discuss from the planning group side. So maybe let's, if anyone has any other responses, let's open to another round of discussion, of comments and questions and discussion. I think a last round of comments.
Comrades, there's 5 minutes before it's 2 o'clock, so I'm just going to ask you to keep your comments nice and short. There's 1, 2.
Hi, I've got a few comments. Thank you for facilitating this. I want to say that the students are really opening up this society. I come from the first wave of struggle. We're now into the second wave of struggle, and a lot of our dreams have been betrayed. So this is wonderful that the students and workers are doing this, and you have a lot of people's support. My comments have to do with the idea of decolonisation. This is not just socioeconomic, it's political. So the first comment that was made about African students' access to the funding model here is an important one, because there's been a pretense about this university and our universities in general being first-class universities when we know that we have still remained apart from Africa, and there are universities that have a lot to contribute to our knowledge, and we as South Africans should have access to them. So we as students and workers should be lobbying for an African Union where there can be free flow of university students, intellectual and cultural exchanges, and we should have access to that. And the defunct African Union that is only interested in positioning leaders who are corrupt and tyrannical should be tackled in this regard. So for me, this is a very political struggle that not just features national systems, but also broader, continental, and global systems. Secondly, I would like to say that regarding the tax system, there are movements globally that are also looking at, that are against war and how taxes are being used. We should be lobbying for a tax system here where we as citizens who pay tax, no matter how much or how little it is, can choose where we want our taxes to be used. So for instance, if we want it in a fund where workers' children and poor kids can get free education, we should have that right, and not ridiculous amounts of money being spent on defense, and which brings me to my third comment, which is about corruption. Billions of rands every year is lost to corruption, and it is part of the rotten system that has taken place here, that has just continued the apartheid system, and we should be focusing our efforts on that. If you take just a portion of that amount that gets stolen by politicians and corporates, it can pay for free education. I know because I've done research on that in the NGO sector. My fourth comment has to do with the fact that in the neoliberal system, a lot of the facilities that we had at universities to do with community outreach, like working with community organizations and facilities for education, etc., have been shut down by the universities. So part of the decolonization process should be about opening up that and working, for instance, with ECD, early childhood development. What can 4 universities in this Western Cape province, for instance, do in terms of human and other resources that it can deliver so that the kids we want to enter this university can take place? My final comment is, I always hear in our student and worker engagements about everything else except gender issues and women's issues. We heard a little bit about pregnant women, and I'm saying to you that the heart of the decolonial experience and change, like with language, is situated with the black woman in this country. And at this university, black women are invisible and treated like crap. So that needs to change. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to add on to what Comrade said there. I just wanted to find out as well. I agree with him that everyone has a part to play in this. And one thing I want to ask, and how can we anonymously, or how can we, is there a structure or a system where people are able to contribute their ideas or their findings on tackling the struggle? How do they, where's the platform for them to contribute? If this is open for everyone and it's not just to a certain group of people, is there a platform for people to contribute? Thanks.
On. Amanda, away, 2. Students and everyone else from management who's present, my name is Mzwandile Simelane. Firstly, I'd like to just laud and applaud the student group who has formed this document. It's a laudable document. But then the introduction says we're still interrogating free decolonized education. That means we're still asking questions. Why aren't we taking free decolonized higher education? Because now one assignment that I would like to put to the floor, as well as the students in the front, is that can you please provide, not just myself, all of us here, with this, not just the statistics of the future, but of the present, whereby you research and provide the information on, firstly, how many students are currently financially excluded by UCT? Secondly, how many students cannot graduate because of historical debt? And when they graduate, what they get is not their degree in their hand, but a statement of bills saying how much money is owed to the university. Thirdly, how many graduates are looking for jobs and cannot find jobs? Is that information readily available? Because when you address an enemy, you should address an enemy from the inside rather than from the outside. We'll focus on the bigger picture, but when you build a puzzle, you must first start with the frame and then put the meat inside. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I just want to make a comment on something that was raised earlier on in terms of the market forces and how that could influence the possibility of having free education, higher education. I think in our discussion, we also need to look at the role of the state, because as much as market forces and neoliberalism is international, it's a global time, we really and seriously need to interrogate the role of the state. Is our government working for its people, are we a developmental state? And the definition of a developmental state is a government that mediates between the market, free marketeerism, and the people. So it's a government that is able to stand up for its people, to utilize the economy and ensure that whatever economic growth or whatever benefits come out of it are being used and utilized for the betterment of the people in terms of improvement of human capability. So we also need to seriously interrogate our state and our government, and are they enabling us to have free education, or are they being a national bourgeoisie that Fanon speaks on? So we seriously need to interrogate the state and government. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. Sorry. Just to speak into the question that the comrade had asked about how many students are currently facing financial exclusion at this university. There are currently 21 academically eligible students who are going to be evicted in the next week or two, owing a total amount of 2 million rands from the university. We've exhausted every bureaucratic channel that exists in trying to address this issue. And speaking to what another speaker spoke about today, a good portion of that cohort of student facing exclusions are international students. We've tried our best to lobby, but there's legal implications about using public funding for non-citizens and all of that. But I have a question, so that was just to answer the question that a comrade had just asked. My question is that I understand that the research had largely been empirical based, but I think that for a long time in these spaces, we've been very ambiguous about the role of white people and where we find ourselves today. And I think that when we talk about wages, when we talk about fees, we cannot talk about it mutually exclusive from the question of land, because there are questions that we need to ask, like whose land is this university built on? Who's getting the rates that are getting paid by us ultimately, on this land and all of that. So I think that when we move forward in our conversations about the Student Worker Alliance and the collective interest that we hold, it is integral that we talk about important things such as the expropriation of land. But yeah, I'm done. Without compensation.
Oh. So the point that I want to make is if you look at the whole, there's less than maybe 1,000 students, workers, staff, academics, right? It's a week before exams. This document has been out for more than a month. So for me, the question is if management really takes the call for free decolonized education seriously, then they would make this meeting accessible and compulsory to students, workers, and academics at the university, so that there are not 500 people discussing free decolonized education, but 27,000 people. And you get more students coming to a hall during Fees Must Fall, during the kaboom and everything, and you get arrested and interdicted and whatever. But we're actually raising very important issues, and we're wanting people to come and engage. So I really don't understand why they waited to the last minute to have this conversation when they know people aren't going to come. Yeah.
So just quickly, I agree with all of the comments that were made. Just to add to the last comment, that on the planning group, which is the structure that's organizing this and doing this, the kind of power that we have as students or our influence is dependent on more students joining the planning group. Because otherwise you have resistance. For example, it's hard to push through something like a compulsory mass meeting, which we really should have for this issue. And so I want to reiterate the call earlier. There was a question earlier. Please do join the planning group. Anyone can join it. You can email me. My email's on the booklet at the first page. And there are lots of emails that have gone out in campus announcements where the details of the planning group is given there. And then you can be caught up very easily once you get into the planning group. You can give as many comments as you want, and we need as much commentary and participation as possible.
Comrades, firstly, I think we understand time is of the essence here. Firstly, I would like to thank everyone that is here. Thank you very much for sacrificing your meridian. I would like to remind you that this is one of many sessions to come. So understanding that we were doing this so that we were able to make a submission to the Fees Commission, but the research will continue. The fact that we are having these engagements is to develop the research in itself, because central to developing the research, the funding models, we must be able to consult all the various stakeholders, not only in the institution, but in society as a whole. So engagements are taking place in our communities. Our community is not Rondebosch only. There's Mitchell's Plain, there's Khayelitsha, there's Kraaifontein. So all these discussions are taking place in these very communities and in other institutions as well. And we want to be able to consolidate all of this knowledge and all this information and be able to produce a document and a model which is representative of our society as a whole. So this is one of many, and we'd like to thank you for coming. This document that you have here is a shortened version, or a shorter version. There's one on the UCT website, a longer version, with the so-called statistics that you request, and an in-depth analysis of the various models. So there's that platform, and there will be many other engagements in residences and in departments and in faculties next semester as well. So thank you very much for sacrificing your time here, and we hope to engage with you more.